Hi, I'm Troy McMullen. I study lichens here at the museum. My research program is focused all over North America, but one of my main focuses is in the Arctic. But before moving ahead, I think we should all be on the same page about what a lichen is. A lichen is really a fungus that's discovered agriculture. It's learned how to farm. It works together with an algae or a cyanobacterium, and when the two come together, they transform into something completely unique, and we recognize it as a species. Lichens can be really small, and they can be really large. Small, like this one beside the quarter here, and large, like this mat that I'm lying in on the other side. The ones that grow on the large side can feed herds of hundreds of thousands of caribou in the winter months when there isn't much else to eat. And they're a lot like coral on the terrestrial, in the terrestrial environment, in that they're very colorful. They have many different shapes. They're very sensitive, and they actually get their nutrients and minerals from the air and from the water that washes over them, a lot like coral. So in the Arctic, there's a lot of lichen. However, there hasn't been a lot of collecting. This is a map of the collection density that we know of. So anywhere that you see red, there was 150 species collected, and that's not a whole lot in the Arctic, showing that there hasn't been a whole lot of collecting done up there. So since I've been at the museum, I've gone up to the Arctic 4 times. These are the sites that I went to all throughout the Arctic. And I'm focusing specifically on Nunavut right now. And I've gotten to the far corners thus far, and will continue to go into the future. The first trip that I did was in 2016. A team of us went up from the museum, and you can see us in the corner there working with elders, where we're learning about traditional uses of lichens and plants. The landscape up there was fairly flat, but it still had lots of interesting species. Here are just 6 of a large number of species we found that had major disjuncts. So the blue dots are the ones in Arviat, and then the red ones are all the historical ones. So we had these major disjuncts, suggesting we really don't understand the baseline in the Arctic all that well. So when changes come, we won't know if things have changed. So we had some adventures up there, like these Arctic terns that didn't like us going near their nests, that would dive bomb us, and we would encounter polar bears almost every single day. So always going up there is an adventure. One of the big adventures that we had was Paul Sokoloff and I went up to the high Arctic in 2017. We went to several islands in the high Arctic. This is our base camp at one of them, and I showed that rabbit there because you can get really close to some of the animals because they don't encounter people very often. Some of the adventures that we had up there included creeks that once we crossed them early in the morning, we'd come back at the end of the day and they'd be 3 times the size, or flying in this DC-3. The last one was built in 1946, and when we got to any altitude, oxygen masks would drop down that we had to take on. And once again, we found a lot of major disjuncts, like this species here that typically grows in the deserts of the Southwest. And we also got to meet colleagues from around the world, like this camp here where there was about 15 different countries represented. In 2018, another team of us went up to Baffin Island, and we worked. We really focused our energies on Sylvia Grinnell Territorial Park. Did a complete inventory of it, and as you would, as the theme would show, we found a lot of interesting disjuncts, like this species as well. Is new to Nunavut, new to the Arctic, really. And this just shows the kind of collecting that we do. This is 2 days worth of collecting. Each one of these bags represents a specimen, and they're all drying right now. And we found additional disjuncts. These ones aren't as far as some of the other ones we've seen, but they're still new to the Arctic archipelago, so just the Arctic islands. So we really don't understand the baseline of what is there, and how can you say things are changing without knowing that baseline? In 2019, the summer just passed, I went up with a team from the University of Guelph to look for lichens around Kugluktuk, focusing on Kugluk Territorial Park. And lo and behold, we found more species that were new to Nunavut, like this species here, which I collected right in the spray zone of the falls at Kugluk Falls. And so this project, we went to 2 sites. We went to Kugluk, and then we went to Cambridge Bay a little further in. And Cambridge Bay was really interesting because the rock type was different. It was very calcareous there, which meant the species were different. So there was a lot of species we saw when we worked in Uvuyuk Territorial Park, and there was a lot of species that we didn't see anywhere else. So this summer's past, we were doing our work through the Arctic Bioscan project, which is trying to generate DNA barcodes for all the species in the Arctic, and I'm leading the lichen portion of that project. It's a much larger project. And I thought I'd finish with an interesting species that Paul Sokoloff previously pointed out. This is the first Arctic species that the two of us have, or that anyone has nominated as a species at risk in Canada. It's endemic to Canada, and it's a spectacular one that deserves to be listed. Thank you.